Recently, I put out a video on my main channel in which I am carried through the new Manaforge Omega normal raid. Near the end, I briefly discuss how I am finding the differences between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. This was supposed to be a small follow-up to that. It has spiraled as I've been going. This is a ramble. I have a small script that is basically just bullet points to help me along. I have tried to play this game previously, on 2 separate occasions in fact. First was nearly 10 years ago. I rolled the Night Elf Druid and almost immediately quit. Now, remember, I had never touched an MMO before. I was a competitive FPS gamer, and the closest to an RPG I had gotten was Mario Galaxy as a young kid. Not less than 10 minutes into trying this new genre had I been tasked with clearing, gotten lost in, and died in Shadowthread Cave. I had no experience with the movement in MMOs, nor with how the map functioned, and they weren't explained very well. What had also not been explained at all was the death system. I figured I had just respawned, and maybe had some level of protection. So, not particularly thrilled with the idea of trying to wander this cave and pull far too many mobs again, I approached, only to not be able to interact with anything. Iolta Ford. I had not the patience for this. My second attempt at trying the game was during Shadowlands. I had just found a love for Final Fantasy XIV after the end of Shadowbringers and the start of Endwalker, and I was looking for a similar experience elsewhere, trying any MMOs that had a free trial at the time. And things started promising. I had forgotten about my druid, and so I had rolled a human paladin. The game thrust me aboard the starter ship and walked me through all the little bits it hadn't before. I had gotten used to how MMOs played fundamentally at this time, but it was a fairly in-depth beginner's tutorial around moving and how combat functions with one button. It also introduced me to the Garrick siblings and a number of other colourful characters, who I would interact with as they taught me other gameplay mechanics. As a standard gameplay tutorial, it felt quite nice to wander through. I was also fully immersed in the story at this time. But all good things must come to an end. Maybe I was too used to how 14 handled things. Maybe it didn't explain things well. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But all I remember was this deep confusion as the queue popped and nothing happened. After wandering around for a bit, I tried going through the vaguely portal-looking thing, only to find an empty room. I tried leaving and coming back in, but that did nothing. Then dialogue appeared in my text chat. The dragon I was here to stop was being revived. And then the dungeon ended. I was kicked out and asked to ride a hippogriff. With my knowledge now, I know what went wrong. But a mix of not being told how to actually enter the dungeon and a clearly experienced player in a rush meant I never got to experience the dungeon as a whole. And the final nail in the coffin? After flying to Stormwind and being rushed through the landmark quests, I was to meet with Lady Jaina. I'd heard Captain Garrick mention her, so I was okay with approaching her, only for the opening cutscene of Battle for Azeroth to play. I was immediately thrust into a story I had no grasp of, with characters I had no attachment to. When I was thrown in jail and stripped of my items, the slowly building resentment finally got me to alter for once again, and not touch the game for a very long time. Not until around a month ago. My friend Slee had just gotten back into WoW with the release of Season 3 and was determined to drag us in with him. And thank God he was there. Without him, I don't think I would still be playing. Due to my previous 2 attempts at playing the game, I was no longer considered a new player. So when I loaded the game back up, I never received any other tutorials. My druid was lost in a cave and my paladin was locked in BFA jail, so I tried to roll a Drakthir, the newest race I had access to. I'd heard of Dragonflight and they seemed interesting. I did not realize what a hero race was, and immediately got thrust into Dragonflight. I didn't know how to do anything, and got my ass handed to me by the Proto-Dragons, upon first arrival, because the game had never given me a shield, and I wanted to play a prop warrior. So, I went back. Tried again on the lowest level character I had, and begun my journey as a Night Elf Druid once more. With Slee there, I was able to ask all the questions I needed, everything about the starter zone, the cave I was in, the areas I was meant to go to, receive advice and tutorials the game never bothered to give me. He kept me in the game. No beginner's experience had managed to do so yet, but a good friend who's okay with helping out did a world of good. A personal grievance of mine is how little respect the story of WoW is given by the initial leveling experience. It is unfortunately a symptom of the fundamental game design. When you have to level multiple characters for endgame content, the experience becomes more and more streamlined. It has to be designed around the idea that someone is going to do the same thing 8-9 times over. Unfortunately, that leaves the new players out. I love delving into the story and lore of a game, learning about the people and the places, but the game didn't seem all that interested. Luckily, Dragonflight is a fairly self-contained story, but I fear for the people who will come in and be exposed to War Within for their first story, with all its twisted threads of fate and named characters who you've had to do previous expansions for. The lore-weaving panda is a nice idea, giving the cliff notes of these epic tales, and Chromie time is okay, letting you dip your toes into the old expansions. But it is clear this game is not designed to tell you a story, even though WoW has one of the deepest, richest, most expansive worlds there has ever been in video games. And even then, the story elements keep interfering with the gameplay. I don't care if someone is from the other faction. That doesn't seem to have mattered for over 5 years. Why can't I heal them in the open world? Leveling ended up being quite enjoyable. I was level 40-ish by the time I finished the base story for Dragonflight, and going around doing the rest of the side quests got me another 10 or so levels. It was fairly mindless fluff. The equivalent of putting rubbish TV on and sinking into the couch. It never challenged me, but it wasn't supposed to. It was streamlined for the people doing this for the umpteenth time. So I ended up trying to decipher some of the story and ended up in TBC for the rest of my leveling experience. I figured if I leveled one character in each X-Pack, I could maybe begin to grasp the story. And I got more of the same fluff. What was also happening was I was getting new cool abilities, but never really found the excuse to use them. This was because of how the gearing seemed to work in these zones. It felt like I was riding a weird inverse bell curve. To start, my Moonfires could kill a proto-dragon in one of the starter zones in one hit. Near the end of Dragonflight, I was fighting for my life to survive against the cannon fodder. And during TBC, I slowly climbed back into that position of power again as I gained my end of tree abilities. I had no clue why the experience seemed to get harder, and I felt weaker as the game continued, and it was contrary to how any other game I'd played felt, until it was pointed out to me that the gear difference between me and the level synced enemies was starting to shrink as I went up in level. They were catching up to me, as it were. Gearing my character is actually where I've had the most fun, because it was where I could play with my friends again, and where I could actually contrast the two games. Delves are fine. Whatever. They're mini dungeons with less important objectives and less complicated bosses. Whatever, they're fine. World quests are fine as well. They're just side quests, but they give you more stuff. They're more fluff. Whatever. M+. I am not a fan of M+ dungeons. At least not these dungeons. I do not like the timer, nor the pressure of bricking a key, nor the percentage count. As a tank, I have to keep all of these things in mind, and it's just a knowledge check. It's a really weird knowledge check. The difficulty bump is nice, but it's really a stat check. There's no real change in how a dungeon is pulled from M0 to M10, just how well I need to press the buttons. The bosses don't get more complex, just more punishing, hitting harder and taking more to kill. They feel like difficulty for the sake of difficulty and not for challenge. I am, however, a fan of the raid experience in WoW. MFO, Manaforge Omega, has been really fun for the time I've been doing it. Delirium, the guild I'm a part of, as of time of recording, is 3 of 8 heroic. We've killed Lumathar, we've killed Nazingir, and we've killed the Nexus. I said those in the wrong order, but you know what I mean. A lot of us are new to WoW, and the rest of us are new to raiding. We get help from Slee, he is our raid lead, and a couple of the boys from his mythic guild every so often. They come and go. They're cool guys. What I love is how the difficulty of the raids change. The fight doesn't drastically change or alter like in 14. New mechanics get added slowly as you go up from LFR to normal to heroic and then mythic. So once you know the fight, you only have to learn a small change, or 1 or 2 added mechanics for the harder versions. It's so nice to have knowledge that translates easily and readily. The actual fights themselves have been good as well. Each of them feel right in terms of difficulty and complexity for their place in the raid. The only one I don't like is the Demon Hunters. They can suck nuts. The combat in WoW is so fundamentally different, and yet difficult to separate from that of 14. I have often heard that WoW is random and 14 is a dance, but I find that comparison incomplete. Coming back to 14 and playing for my weekly rewards, I noticed a difference I've never heard anyone mention. Maybe someone has, but I personally haven't ever heard it. And it's the difference in how damage is used to punish. In 14, you are not supposed to take a lot of damage. All of the fights, to my memory, are about avoiding damage as much as possible. And it sounds obvious. Of course you're supposed to avoid damage, but the mechanics are designed in a way that they can be avoided. The fights are about finding the safe spots, about finding ways to place mechanics so that they don't affect the rest of the party, of resolving things to cause the least damage possible. And I think that's why 14 is compared to a dance. There's a lot more micro movements, individuals moving in ways to avoid damage, and individuals being punished for those mistakes. The group doesn't necessarily move, it's about you. If you fuck up a mechanic, you are dead. And because of the small party size, that can often lead to party wipes. Mistakes are punished so much harder, and there is a lot more personal onus to do them right. In WoW, at least the fights I've been in, mechanics are usually group-centric. Because of the large party size, multiple people are always performing a mechanic, except the tanks, but I'll get around to that in a second. There is less individual risk, and even when you do it right, there is often an instance of party damage. And when you get it wrong, if you die, oh well? We can still clear the fight without you. You can't do that in 14. This can be emphasized by the role healers play in each game. If they are on the damage charts at all, it is never by a lot. Their cooldowns are relatively short, their buttons are plentiful, and battle reses are finite. You as a healer are supposed to keep people alive so much more, but it's not such a massive deal when someone dies. In comparison, 14 healers are required to be a part of the party's damage. Their spells are long casts with massive heal potencies. Their cooldowns are often fire and forgets with 2-minute cooldowns, massive explosions of healing before moving on to the next mechanic or returning to the DPS. And we have infinite battle reses. People have to be up. People have to be on their feet. Otherwise, something's gone wrong. And the tanks. Each game has 2 tanks per party, but because of the party size difference and the different philosophies of tanking, they are worlds apart. WoW tanks are selfish creatures. All their mit is personal, with a few exceptions. All their cooldowns are for themselves. Again, shorter cooldowns, and they are often alone for almost half of the mechanics in a fight on their separate island. They interact with the rest of the group when things are moving, or if there's a soak. 14 tanks, by difference, are selfless heroes. They are in charge of the party mitigation, and often have a button to help the other tank. The only mechanics they truly do by themselves are tank busters. Often, they are involved in every mechanic of the fight. So, to conclude, I hesitate to say either of them are harder than the other. And I think that's what's made trying this game so fun for me. It's the learning process. Being taught and learning naturally how the class functions and interacts with the fights. I don't know if I'll ever do Mythic, but I plan on getting at least AOTC. M+ can suck one. And I think I'll keep playing, at least till midnight. Who knows what will happen then.